Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen in the gallery, and to our viewers. Thank you for taking your time to be with us today for our October 11th regular council meeting. I call the meeting to order at 1 p.m. I would ask at this time if there are any added items for the agenda today from my council. Seeing none, I will ask then for a motion to adopt the agenda as presented, please. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that we accept the agenda for regular council meeting for Tuesday, October 11th, 2022 as presented.
Very good. I'll ask the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Page 3, please, of your agenda. We've already completed. We are now at the regular council meeting minutes for September 26th, and I noticed Councillor Wilson had his hand up. Would you like to do the motion to put that motion on the floor, Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I would make the motion that we, council, adopt the meeting minutes from September 26, 2022.
Does council have any questions to these minutes? Additions, deletions? Seeing none, then I will ask the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Page 8, please, of your agenda. Now we are on item 3A, presentations and delegations. Traffic engagement survey results. And I will hand this over to our CAO, Williams.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Before we get to our delegations, we have Director Andrew with us today. He's going to briefly run through the results of the recently completed or closed traffic engagement survey, and then we'll move into our delegations.
Thank you. So through to Mayor Dahl and Council, we have put out a traffic survey to the residents through consultation through social media and advertised on the town website, newspaper, and so forth. So we were looking for some generalized information from the residents, and this came from requests and conversations had from other residents in the past several months with concerns in various locations in Olds about speeds and traffic control measures and things that such that we did need to take a holistic look at kind of the practices that were done in town and areas of improvement and where citizens feel the direction that they would like to point us in for change or staying the same. So our survey was very basic. There was only 3 questions because we were looking at kind of a bigger picture look here before we had a focused direction to take this information and or action. And we've also done some consultation on some other areas as well to communities, municipalities, and what they've done, but we wanted to make sure we keep the bias out so we know what our citizens are looking for. So the first question was, do you support a general reduction in speed from 50 kilometers an hour to 40? So there are other communities around that have gone even further and lowered that to 30. We felt that if we started with a 50 to 40 was more realistic, simply because after consultation with RCMP, they felt that if you go to a 30 kilometer an hour generalized speed, you actually create more problems than you solve, because what happens is that people will feel that it's way too slow and you start to criminalize everybody, because anyone that breaks the speed limit at 30 then potentially could be getting a ticket. So we wanted to just start with the 40 kilometer because it seems like that's the common trend or the answer that most municipalities have gone to. So out of 829 answers, we see that the majority of respondents, 65%, are not in favor of reducing the speed, and 35% are in favor. So there is some differentiation there in the answers, but it is substantially in the heavier of no. The next question was that, do you support the conversion of school zones into playground zones so that there is standardized times of the year, and it also, or standardized times of the day, and it's year round? So the one area that we see this most commonly would be in the Holy Trinity school zone area, is that because it is a playground as well, we do see that when school is out, speeds increase. And so if we change the school zone into a playground zone, then it would be standard, so it would be 8 a.m. till 1 hour after dark all the time. So the piece that this does is that it helps protect those specific areas that aren't fenced. So the two that are in common, again, Holy Trinity School and Deer Meadow School would be the other one that is not fenced, where playgrounds are in place. If you notice, there are other areas in town, like on Highway 27, the Craig's Corner is a fenced playground, so therefore the playground zone doesn't apply, because that's the Alberta transportation rule, is if it's fenced access and controlled sidewalks, then it doesn't have to be. So that's why we're only focusing on these two areas. So if we change that, that would be the areas in specific location is Deer Meadow and Holy Trinity. So you can see with the responses there that it's a closer spread, but it is in favor generally of making that change. And again, you don't have to worry about whether are the kids actually in school today, does that apply, or during summer vacation, it would just be year-round. The last one is a question that was on a broader scope of, do citizens generally support the additional allocation of municipal resources that would be focused specifically on traffic enforcement? And so, again, these are a general piece that looking for a overarching support or not for whether dedicated traffic unit or traffic resources were done, that if we hired staff or had staff allocated directly to traffic enforcement only, if that's something that people feel would be a benefit to the community. And so again, this is a fairly close split being 55 against and 45 for. So again, it helps council understand the desires of the citizens on whether we need to focus on that area with extra resource or not. So those are the three questions that we had in the survey. We did keep the survey limited with no comments available, again, simply because it's hard to capture comments and put that into an easy to read format at this point. Again, this is only the beginning. This isn't the end of this. So based on the presentation and the direction from council, then we can gather some more data and present some more information. So that is the questions on the survey. If I can answer any questions, I'd be happy to.
Very much for that, Director Andrew. And at this time, we do have speaker list, and I would ask then if we could start from the top of the list. I have had direction, I believe our legislative clerk was asked to read for a submission, and the individual was unable to come. Did you want to start with that one, or? Okay, we'll do a submission by Citizen Drew Marston, who is unable to be here, and we will read his submission.
Thank you. I believe Director Andrew has it up on the screen for you. This was submitted and presented to Council on August 22nd in your regular Council agenda package. And he just asked that it be included again today for your consideration. Dear Mayor and Council, I write to you today to speak about the non-existent speed enforcement in Olds that has been allowed to go on unchecked for years. My neighbors, family, and myself are at a boiling point because we don't feel that we are receiving the level of service from the bylaw or the RCMP that we are paying for as ratepayers. This problem has been going on for a very, very, very long time before Eric Christensen and Joe Reed. However, I must say Joe was the only one I ever saw out pulling people over, and I thanked him for that many times. I am aware of the transition that bylaw has been experiencing lately, and I'm taking that into consideration while writing this. But like I said, this problem has existed for quite a while. The 50th, 51st, and 52nd Street from 50th Avenue all the way up to 57th Avenue is wide open for 6 blocks. It's a racetrack where people drag race and speed. I would guess some speeds are 70 kilometers per hour. It is sometimes impossible to get a plate or a description, but I can tell you it's the same vehicles that are responsible for some of the most dangerous driving. Our street has been dug out for over a year with deep ruts. It doesn't slow them down at all. If anyone proposes a lower speed limit, I have to say that that won't work either, because if the RCMP and bylaw are not interested in or can't/won't enforce the current 50 kilometer per hour, how does anyone think they will be able to enforce 40 or 30 kilometers per hour, or whatever you choose? People who believe the lower speed limit will magically make everyone follow that are fooling themselves. Enforcement is the only way to get this problem under control. If we have speed traps or even a bit of consistent enforcement, I think this will be most effective. We don't need a lower speed limit or more stop signs or even speed bumps. What we need is enforcement of the current 50 kilometers per hour. How did we get to this point? Why has this been allowed to go unchecked for so long? Drew Marston.
Thank you. This is our legislation clerk that read this for us, and we'll keep this for the record for the minutes. We will now move to the gallery members that are here, that are present, and the first one we would like to ask, would you like to speak, is Val Warnock. Would Val like to come up and speak? Thank you, Val.
Don't be alarmed, the notebook isn't full. Good afternoon, Mayor Dahl, Council. Thank you very much for allowing me to stand before you again. My content is very much like when I was able to speak with you in May at the Policies and Priorities meeting. And things haven't changed a whole lot, but I'll try and keep things rather streamlined for in the interest of time. I hope you've all had a nice Thanksgiving break into the bargain. So on that, just as the former letter had indicated, and certainly different areas of the city, which Chief Andrew had pointed out, I never thought at any time was our concern the only one on the, what I call the little raceway, 57th Avenue, south of 60th Street. We happen to live there, and so that's the one I could speak most honestly to. We are still experiencing the high volumes of traffic. It's notably a high traffic area, and we did understand that when we moved here a couple of years ago. There was a lovely pavement upgrade in 2020, as you're all aware. That has increased the volume of traffic markedly, and with that, more excessive speeding and more noise, of course. On the noise issue, I'm not familiar with what current bylaws might be regarding noisy mufflers, noisy vehicles, just generally noise. Some of our buildings are such that it reverberates into our back decks on top of that, which certainly compounds the problem. When I spoke last time, one of my suggestions was just very simple 50 kilometer per hour signage, which is the stretch that we're on, and it wasn't well marked that way for visitors to Olds that didn't realize maybe we're still considered within the town of Olds. I'm understanding some work is done in that direction for simple signage, and if that's in fact the case, then I thank you for that. I think that would be a good, easy first start, and maybe not so expensive, because I know a lot of things are. Following that kind of an easy first, maybe low-hanging fruit fix, I have often suggested, much like the letter that was just read, some sort of radar usage, and I'm not so naive to think that's just an easy fix. Previous staff and enforcement officers that were here had explained somewhat to me that it's a very complex issue, and of course Chief Andrew has also indicated that it involves other layers of government, and I get all that, I really do. But I do think that if we're talking about increasing costing, much as the traffic survey had asked some folks what they thought about that, and I appreciate that ability to weigh in on that too. I think that if costing and budgets are going to be looked at, again, enforcement, I think, is the key, and if we can't have the tools that work well to enforcement, such as radar that's not so highly visible as a roadside stop where, a vehicle's going to stop if they see a cruiser. So, I mean, it is a deterrent, but it's obviously not going to stay parked on the side of the road. So I think if we can do a more low visibility radar and bring that into effect somewhere, at least occasionally or on a sort of a rotational basis or whatever we can come to afford, I think it's going to get a message across, because we aren't a racetrack town and we shouldn't be treated that way. So again, just sort of the same kind of, that's the biggest issue, I find. And if we could bring that, we'd be happy as a community to do whatever we can. And on that note, some of my neighbors who are sharing a concern, we just want to all thank Mayor and Council and certainly staff and enforcement, Chief Andrew, for the efforts you're putting in. I know it isn't easy. I've sort of been here, but I do want to thank you for that. And I think that if we can, use the digital speed sign data that's compiled, and hopefully it'll bring something useful forward. And I would definitely be a very strong proponent of putting some of the funding that will have to go forward into a meaningful radar type enforcement, so that we can all have a little bit quieter communities and a little bit safer, hopefully, with the speed down. I thank you for that.
Well, Val, thank you very much for speaking on behalf of your neighbors as well. Thank you for your time. Secondly, we have Mandy Mckee. Welcome, Mandy.
Hi, I'm not a public speaker, so I wrote everything down. So I'm just reading this. Good afternoon, Mayor Dahl. Good afternoon, Council. Thank you for listening to me. In November of last year, while walking between Deer Meadow Middle School and Olds Elementary, my 8-year-old daughter and I were nearly struck by a school bus at the four-way intersection of 57th Avenue and 54th Street. I am extremely cautious when crossing this intersection because, unfortunately, this has not been an isolated incident. Prior to that incident, we had too many close calls with other drivers to even count, and that was only in November, so that was only 2 months of making this walk. While I do find that people are driving slower at that intersection and typically have seen us or others before they make it through the intersection, it is dangerously common that a driver starts to cross the intersection and only stops in the middle after realizing they might run into a pedestrian, which at that time was us. I have even had a neighbor apologize to me weeks later, who I didn't know, but he recognized me while we were walking our dogs, after he did this very thing, almost hit us with his work van because he was only paying attention to the car traffic and not the pedestrians. Because these other instances incurred no injury, they were obviously not reported, but I am not the only one who sees this intersection as dangerous, as a dangerous one in need of better regulation. There have been numerous parents and children that we meet on that exact walk to and from school who all feel the same about this particular crossing, and the two others that are, to a lesser degree, that are east on 54th Street. They're not four ways, they're just across the street. Almost a year ago, I made a formal complaint to Chinook's Edge because it was a memorable experience, and even the kids in the bus saw us, but the driver did not until they had already turned the corner, and I grabbed my daughter out of the way as we were over halfway through the crosswalk, and the bus came within inches of hitting us. Chinook's Edge informed me in a return phone call that they frequently receive complaints about this intersection, but only have the authority to deal directly with their own drivers. This problem is not exclusive to school bus drivers, even though that is the incident that incited my complaint. It was just the final straw in a series of very close calls. There are people driving to work, high school students driving to school, all at a particular time of day, parents driving their children to school, and any number of other town citizens that use this intersection without being completely diligent about pedestrians. Justin Andrew, Chief Andrew, thank you, replied to my complaint to the town of Olds at that time, or maybe a week later, stating that mine was the only complaint between 2017 and 2021, which is hard for me to believe because I've talked to so many other parents. One parent I spoke with regularly on our morning walk told me that she had made a petition with a list of other parents' signatures to draw attention to this exact intersection. I don't have her contact info, or I would have asked her to be here today. Prior to 2017, there have definitely been complaints that were either left with town or the RCMP that were left unaddressed. My friend and neighbor, Kyla Granger, filed an official complaint to the RCMP, and at the hospital when her then teenage daughter was struck by a truck on December 22nd, 2012, and held onto the hood of the truck so she wouldn't be pulled under and run over. Only then did the driver pull over so she could get off his truck. He opened his window to ask if she was okay. When she didn't respond, he drove away, leaving her stunned on the sidewalk. This is a child. She was later taken to the hospital with an arm full of deep bruising and thankfully nothing broken. There were witnesses, and Kyla sent me a text. If you'd like, I can read it. She sent it to me today from 2012 from one of the witnesses that said, "I think I saw your daughter get hit by a truck. Is she okay?" Another neighbor who I know has filed complaints is Nancy Kilpatrick, and she is happy to share her number. She has seen even more close calls than I have because she's been here a lot longer and is equally frustrated that nobody seems to be taking this seriously. I know it takes a lot to build infrastructure, but this is our children's lives. This brings me to the dangers of the two other crosswalks on 54th Street, one that has a crossing light already and the other that is at the end of 54th Avenue and 54th Street that remains uncontrolled. We have walked across both of these intersections hundreds of times over the last 5 years, and every day we are never sure if this is the day we will get hit by a car. Nancy stopped to let us cross the street once on the way home from school a few years ago, only to be passed by a young driver, presumably coming from the high school, who swerved around her to keep driving, not even noticing that we were in the middle of the street. His windows were open. We heard him swear as he slammed on his brakes to not hit us, just as Nancy blasted her horn at him to alert him to the pedestrian crossing and the reason she had stopped. This particular crosswalk might be even more dangerous because vehicles have had time to pick up speed on what they might feel is a wide open road and are no longer cognizant of the fact that there are two other crosswalks. We have also had too many close calls here to mention from senior drivers who literally didn't see us. We try to make eye contact with everyone before we even take a step across the road, and some of them don't even register, as well as high school kids who are texting while driving. This is unacceptable to me. None of these close calls are okay. It's just a matter of time before someone does get seriously injured or killed. If construction of better crosswalks is not feasible, and I understand it's very expensive, then please consider, you have, either lowering the speed limit, which I know is really a contentious issue, some kind of speed bump, or at least for the school calendar year, that seems to be the only time that this is a problem, a crossing guard at any or all of those crosswalks. These seem to be the only times of day that any of the crosswalks are problematic, but please don't wait until one of our children or even the parents sustain a fatal injury. I have this as well. Police concerned with crosswalk safety from October 11th, 2011. Olds RCMP is seeing an increasing number of motor vehicle violations at town crosswalks. We are receiving many complaints of motor vehicles not stopping at crosswalks, says Olds RCMP Constable Chris Pedden, adding the crosswalk at the four-way stop intersection at 54th Street and 57th Avenue is especially problematic. This is exactly the one that I am referring to, and this is 2011, and nothing has changed at that crosswalk in that time. There are an increasing number of complaints before and after school of motorists not stopping for pedestrians. People are still driving through them. So that's all I really have to say, but thank you for listening.
Dee, would you be willing to leave your submission with our legislative clerk? Thank you very much for your time and for sharing that. I will now move on to our third speaker, April. Welcome, April. Are you speaking on your own behalf or as the president of Uptown Olds? Okay, thank you very much for clarification of that.
Do we have my letter on here by any
Yeah,
chance?
Justin's just finding it right now.
Oh, I'll get my glasses then.
That's
How's
okay.
that?
The F, next one. Perfect. You can even just show the bottom more than the, perfect. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me at council. We really appreciate that. I'm probably not as organized as what these people are, but I'll just sort of go through my letter really quickly. We're proposing something in twofold in this letter. The first one I will address is the speed limit, which everybody else has as well. We also have been experiencing a lot of pedestrians possibly getting hit in the uptown, being very close. Now, I know that's kind of hard to to fix because it's on the drivers, it's not necessarily on the speed limit. But we're proposing that we drop the speed limit down for that reason, but also because of our patios out there on the main street of Uptown. When you have people driving that quickly by, there's a lot of dust, especially in a summer that we haven't had much rain, and it really impedes the impact of those restaurateurs to be able to have a nice environment to help their customers and to serve their customers. So that impedes on their business to a certain extent when you're having people roaring down that road and also the dust coming up to it. So one is the pedestrians, and you know what, I didn't really think this was much of an issue until it came up at one of our meetings, and just about everybody around the table has said we've almost seen somebody get hit in the Uptown area. So clearly I'm sitting in the back room and I'm not seeing what everybody else is, but that's what they're reporting to me anyways. So we would like to see that, that speed limit drop. With that, of course, we understand that there's another thing that's involved in that, which is possibly the timing of the parking or the signs, the signals, traffic lights. Thank you very much. A lot of people, I've done some research, talk about when you reduce that to the light time, it also reduces the amount of traffic being able to speed through. It takes them a little bit longer, makes them slow down a little bit more during that time. Also, lots of places now are reducing that speed limit because we want our Uptown to be a pedestrian-friendly place. We want to have bikes. We want to be able to have pedestrians walk from shop to shop, from restaurant to restaurant. If there's people almost getting hit, it really impedes that appeal for the Uptown region. My second proposal is parking. And one of the counselors who I was speaking to before said, give us examples then. So I'm not good on streets. All these people know that because I'm saying, what street is that? Can you explain that to me? But I think it's 50th, that we have double parallel parking on each side. It's the pregnancy care. It's also where the new plant place is, the osteopath business down that road. It's both single lane single parking, parallel parking. So when I went and counted it, I didn't have my ruler out because it's a full city block. But when we went to sort of mirror the next one that is down Craig Street, if you know what I'm talking about, there's Craig's, where we had the old Stoberfest barbecue. When I counted the parallel parking, there was 17 spots, and the angle parking is 31. So that significantly changes the amount of parking that we could have in Uptown for all of those new businesses that are going down those side streets. If you've all been down there recently, or any of you have, we are just about full in the Uptown area, unlike other times before. We also have a lot of patient-based businesses, whether it's a pregnancy care unit, the New Path Osteo, we have dentists. It requires not only people to come in to work in those buildings, but then also for those people coming to be able to take advantage of those businesses. So those are my two proposals. I guess, am I supposed to ask if there's any questions, or?
You're the last speaker. I would ask council if they choose at this point to want to ask a question. The only comment I would like to add to what you've presented us today is the difference that you gave us from parallel and angle parking. I personally am a witness to jaywalkers almost getting hit several times a day. I know that's part and parcel of a lot of the possible accidents that are occurring. Nobody wants to go to the stoplights and cross the street. They want to cross the street in front of the business. So that is an area that we definitely have to remember and keep in mind, that that would take a lot more education, or perhaps an enforcement blitz. I would ask the council, is there anything else you'd like to add to any of the speakers? Thank you, Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and through you to April. I had a question with regards to the angled and parallel parking. Now, when I take it that the streets are exactly the same in width correct? So you'd be able to fit the angled parking on there?
From my perspective, and when we look at it, yes. Have I done a measurement on it?
No,
Then no.
probably not. Okay. But what I was going to ask you was with regards to the people who have businesses along there, have you talked to each one of those businesses, and are they in support of going to the angle, and perhaps talking to businesses on the next street over that already have the angle, like, Sims Furniture, and I believe, Granny's was on there, and now it's, which one is it, your business on there? Yeah, exactly. So whether or not those businesses feel that the angle works for them, or, maybe have an opinion as to whether or not it's something that they think should be or could be duplicated on other streets. I'd like to be able to see if we got feedback from all of the businesses within the Uptown Olds so that they all can contribute on whether or not they think this is a good idea. And I'm just wondering if Uptown Olds has done that.
Have we done a survey? No, we have not. But we have spoken to the people that have the parallel parking, a number of them along that street, and they are all in favor of it. I believe one of the reasons I was told that it had not been put into angle parking at the time, and you guys, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it was an emergency access because of the fire. A house used to be across the tracks, so they had to keep it more or less open. And now that the fire station is now on the other side, my understanding is it is no longer required that way. But no, I have not talked to Sims or anyone specifically saying, does this angle parking work for you? Because we assumed it is.
Yeah, I would think that it would be probably best to talk to the owners to find out whether or not they think it works, simply because they might say that, this is not a very good idea, we shouldn't duplicate that. We never know until we actually ask the question.
I
So-
can tell you from the perspective of where a Gallery of Floors is, Mad Greek, and my store, we would 150% be in favor of, because there's very limited parking for people to get into our stores. Now, I know that that's not an opportunity because we have such a wide sidewalk there, but from most business owners, they want to get people to their stores.
Good. Once again, and we have Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Your Worship. Question through you to April, and maybe correction on Councillor Ryan's. They're talking about 50th Street, I believe, right?
I get very confused.
51st.
I'm not good at that.
51st is where Sims and
That's right.
and all that is, and they already have angle parking on the south side, right? So it's on the next street to the north of that. Yeah.
So Daly, yeah, I know that. I'm just asking for them to talk to people who have that angled parking already to see whether or not they think it works, rather than just assuming that it's all good, because we don't know until we talk to people whether or not they may not like it. They may say it's hazard backing out and it's creating trouble parking, creating blind spots, whatever it is. But I mean, we won't know that until we ask that question, or until Uptown Olds ask that question.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, April, you can finish this with your comment.
I respect what you're saying, absolutely. But we also have to take into consideration that a lot of customers are not parking there because employees of the existing businesses are there. So those businesses are not getting what they need for their customer parking. We can certainly compare and contrast it, but if we're going to be having businesses closing down because their customers can't get to them, then I think that tells a whole story.
Very good. I'd ask my CAO Williams if he has any closing comments.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and thank you, April, for the presentation. My comment would be basically back to council that should you wish for administration to look into the matter, rationale, current or previous with the fire hall, for instance, or the width of roads. I don't have that information available, but we can certainly look into it if it's of value. I know during service level discussions in late spring, early summer, that the issue of uptown parking was brought up in terms of establishing the parking lot through signage and whatnot. I believe, was it north of the, east of the tracks, perhaps? I can't recall which lot exactly. So it's an issue that council has discussed recently. So if council wishes, with the parking matter, I'm happy to take direction to look further into it, happily in conjunction with Uptown Olds as well. I can speak to the speed matter afterwards if you wish as well.
Thank you. Council's heard that our CAO is willing to work with us on that. And if I could just ask council this time then to go ahead with the first motion and put it on the floor. I'm going to split them into two. Councillor Ryan, did you have your hand up? Okay, please.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. May I ask a question just before we move on to making a motion?
Pertinent to the discussion?
Yes.
Yes, you can.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Dahl, to Director Andrew. Director Andrew, I was wondering, we did this traffic engagement survey, and just with the Uptown Olds submission, is there any possibility of doing some kind of a review or survey or something along those lines with regards to the 30-kilometer speed limit on just that main street going through the downtown? I'm not sure if that's exactly what Uptown Olds is looking for, but seems to me that it might need, I don't know whether you have any input on that right now, or whether that would be part of what CEO Williams has just suggested about working with Uptown Olds. So if you could just direct a question to you on that.
Yeah, thank you. I believe we can propose a lot of different pieces going forward. I think there's we needed to get a feeling. We've got some information from people. We've worked through some of the background and the history of some other communities. So I think part of that direction of CEO Williams, as mentioned, would be to put some of those pieces together for consideration. And it absolutely can look at Uptown as a specific area. And the other piece is specific areas, because the one thing that does come up is that we can choose as a municipality what we want to do with speed limits on any of our municipal roads, and it doesn't mean that it has to be universally applied. It could be specific to main collectors or feeders or side streets, all of those things. So I think that the next step is for us to take that information and bring it back to council to look at what options are on the table, because I think there's some very valid concerns brought from citizens and business groups, and so we're going to try to endeavor to find what is going to work best for everybody.
Thank you for that, and we'll take one more. Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So one thing that came to light here in the conversation from our residents that I'd like to get some more information on here is complaint sharing. It seems like complaints about these traffic issues are going to 3 different groups, and they're not being shared. That's the RCMP, the school boards, and the town. And we really need, if they are going to those 3 different places, and then we're not getting a complete picture, because people aren't sending them to all 3 of us. They're choosing where to send their discussions to. And I don't think we're getting a complete picture of the actual complaints that are occurring, because we're not communicating with these 3 people. Now, that's whether the school board is forwarding their complaints to the RCMP or us, or not at all, or if the RCMP are sharing that complaint information with us so that we can pick out these trouble spots. That no matter what we do here in the resolution and how we word it, I'd like to make sure that that communication level is addressed, and that we approach these other 2 groups and say, hey, we got to start sharing information.
Thank you, Councillor Cummings. Director Andrew, Director of Protective Services, would you like to have a final comment to that statement prior to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I agree. I mean, communication is vital, and statistics and data is absolutely something that we can use to drive this. And I can't speak to prior to my tenure in the position as far as how data was collected as far as some of these complaints, but we have a fairly extensive database on things dating back for some period of time, and the difficult piece in this that we have found is that, yes, there are very much strong opinions, there are very much valid concerns, and and all of those need to be taken into account. And the hardest thing for us in protective services, and I can speak for law enforcement on that side, is the hearsay complaint, where without it physically coming into your hands to bring forward your concern, in a written form, that's the hard part, is they get lost. And over the previous years of time, I can't speak to where those complaints may or may not have gone. All I can speak to is now, and so we have engaged with this group of people very actively, wanting them to come here and speak with council and formalize their complaints so that we can track it and follow it up.
That's very good, thank you. Councillor Cummings, I'm splitting the motions up in two. If you'd like to add that point of communication to the second resolution, I'll go ahead with Councillor Ryan, who's going to make this current resolution for number one. Otherwise, I can ask another council if they're interested.
I don't know.
So you're asking to add a communication component to direct, to go to administration, is that correct?
Not exactly. I'm
Okay.
just asking for administration as part of their follow-up through this. I don't think it needs a resolution.
Well, we are, okay.
So I'm just asking that administration, as part of their follow-up to all of this, I mean, the motions are to accept this information as information, not give them direction. If we want to give them direction to do something specific, we can. I'm looking just for a nod of the head from administration that they will look into the communication side. I don't think we need a resolution for that.
Okay, I'll leave it up to council. Right now, we have Councillor Ryan, please.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that the information presented by the citizens on traffic in the town of Olds be accepted as information.
Your comments? Thank you very much. If not, seeing none, I will then call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. And finally, the engagement survey results for acceptance for information. Who would like to make that? Councillor Blatz?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that the traffic engagement survey results presented be accepted as information.
Thank you, Councillor Blatz. I will call the question. Those in favor?
So I have a question.
You have a question to the motion?
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Wilson, move forward.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. So we're accepting the information here, whether it's from the citizens or the engagement survey as information. Are we going to direct, I thought, as the CEO perhaps alluded to, direct administration to do some type of feasibility study, review, at least on, or as it relates to angle parking, to get back to us, or is that implied, understood?
I would believe that would be a separate resolution. We have a motion on the floor from Councillor Blatz at this time. If you so wish to entertain one, you most certainly can. Councillor Blatz? We have a motion on the floor from Councillor Blatz. Any further questions? I'll call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. This is your moment if you choose then to do that, or CA Williams, would you like to add to that? We can, okay, Councillor Cummings has a comment.
Seems like we need to have a resolution here to instruct administration to review and come back at a later date with a more coherent plan moving forward for traffic issues in Olds. I don't know how to make that any more specific because we're not really asking them to do something specific.
Are you willing to let your name stand for that motion, Councillor Cummings?
Yes, I'm just
Thank
writing
you.
it down now.
Okay, so that is the motion on the floor, and he can hand that to our legislative clerk. Is everybody understanding of that, or would you like to wait and have it reread? You would like it read back? Okay, we'll just give a minute for Councillor Cummings to direct that to the legislative clerk, and then we'll put that on the floor. Councillor Cummings, thank you.
So I'll read that motion there again. To direct administration to return to council with a specific plan to address traffic safety in the town.
Would council like to ask further questions to the motion? Seeing none, then I will call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Now I'll turn it over to our CO Williams.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. And further to just my parking comments earlier regarding speeding, which heard from the gallery and from the letter read today. The Director Andrew referenced this is just the start of the engagement because there certainly is a problem here. I don't think anyone in administration, and not to speak for council, but on council would probably agree with that speeding is an issue. And as Mr. Marston, I believe is how you pronounce his name, alluded to in his letter, he is correct, and the town hasn't had consistent enforcement mechanisms in at least a few months now, if not approaching a year. So from administration's point of view, our first task, now that we have one of our peace officers designated under the Traffic Act to enforce what's called moving traffic violations, our second CPO is actually in Lacombe in a course this week to do just the same. There are excuses for that gap in service. No one's interested in hearing excuses, I'm sure, so I won't go into that. The point is we haven't had effective enforcement mechanisms, powers, since probably the very start of 2022. So what myself and speaking for Director Andrew commit to is having from, I would say, this month forward, consistent enforcement efforts. And hopefully those efforts bear fruit going forward. If they don't, of course, then we have to look into whether it be speed limit reductions across the board or strategic, whether like uptown, for instance, go into the discussion on school zones versus playground zones, part-time, full-time matters. But probably by even this time next month, the Director Andrew will be back with a report with some options for council. What did the survey results say based on our feedback today, and based on what realistic options are? So it looks like a blanket reduction in speed limit is not going to be the appetite of town residents, but council does have the authority to parcel that out geographically or what have you. So the point of this long diatribe is to say that thank you to Val, Mandy, April, and Drew on his submission today and for speaking, and we'll be in touch soon. Thank you.
Thank you, CO Williams. It's greatly appreciated that you shared that very important information with these ladies and gentlemen in the gallery today. There's the speakers, you know, their time is very valuable, and for you all to show up today was a real credit for us to hear what you had to say. So as CO Williams has said, we will be more informed probably within a month to be able to provide a better picture. So once again, thank you. We will be moving on. You're welcome to stay. Otherwise, we are going to be moving directly down our agenda. So thank you. Well, are you staying? Okay, I understand. We can certainly do that. All right. Being that you did bring your submission here, did you have a further question you wanted to add to the other letter, right? Marcia, can you please note that letter?
Yes. While you have April here, we were just wondering if you had any more questions for her on her second letter that was in correspondence before she leaves.
Yes, thank you for bringing that to our attention once again, because it's at the very bottom of our agenda to get to this point. I do note that you, when I read it, went over my agenda that you had spoke to others with regards to, okay, this is, come on up, April. A past letter, I'm referring to a past letter that it must be on the other letter. Go ahead.
I don't need to take up a whole lot of your time. I assume everybody's sort of read this letter. I guess I'm here if there's any clarification. I certainly needed some clarification from the town, and CAO Williams did give me some. But we would really like to move forward with this endeavor in Uptown. I'm not sure if any of you are aware that not only is this going to beautify it, but also we've had a lot of vandalism done in Uptown Olds. Last week I had my furnace turned off on the top of my building because some kids have climbed up there and are drinking beer and doing vandalism up there. So by putting these lights up, it's even going to make it even brighter in the Uptown. We've called the RCMP. They're certainly busy. We understand that. I've had my window broken, close to $3,000. Shoppers have had their window broken. Curvaceous Boutique has had their window broken. And this isn't also a beautification, but it's going to help with illuminating the Uptown. So maybe those people won't hang around as much as what they do right now. I could go into details. We have 60 lampposts up in the Uptown. Certainly we understand that it's impossible to do all of those, maybe not. Maybe we want to do a section, beginning section, the middle section, end to start with. I don't know how much detail you want me to go into. We haven't picked out any lights because when I spoke to Mr. Wagstaff, he said he wasn't sure about what lights type needs to be put up there. And then it was sort of left at that. And it's been almost a year now. So if anybody knows, I'm somewhat dogmatic. That has to be who I am in my role in my company. I trust, but I verify. That's what we say all the time in my job. So, I just need to verify, what's actually impeding us from doing this and what is presumed that is going to be impeding us from doing this. Leon, who owns RIPS, you all know him, he said for years that it was a Fortis issue. And so I just want to get down to the bottom of this because Camrose does this. When I go to my store in Camrose, at Christmas, it's lit up, it's electric. I just want to bring that to our town. We have a beautiful area that's out by the Rotary Ball Diamonds with all the shopping up there. If things continue to go out there with the malls and the shopping, I know there's another parcel of land, we're going to get left out in Uptown to a certain extent by the visitors. If we have something that shows, hey, we're here, that might help us with our business in the downtown area.
Found the section when I read this. It was you were stating that the topics with the concept of the white lights in Uptown Olds for the holiday shopping season, and you were informed that the letter sent to councillors we did not receive them. You were told that the councillors did not receive them.
Yeah, and I'm probably putting that on myself as much as anybody else. I sent it to where I thought it should have gone, but I'm certainly not accusing anyone of anything.
I'm not looking at it that way because
Okay.
I haven't, the only thing I know about lights, and this is, speaking from the past, present, and likely the future, is that each and every one of us go to a convention every year. They're always on display. We always bring information back. You are correct. There's been some beautiful, beautiful options for us to take. What was impeding us was dollars. They are very, very expensive, but that doesn't mean we can't start with one or two or three and continue to add, or however, we can make it work. But I'd leave the floor up to council this time if you'd like to add. Councillor Wilson and Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and thanks, April, for the information. I guess my only comment is, and you're right, I reference our discussion we had at the street barbecue a couple weeks ago. I do like the idea, I do support the idea. Mayor Dahl, you raise certainly a valid point around the cost, but I think as far as, call it whatever you want, beautification of the uptown area, introducing a vibrancy, possibly a safety, security benefit as well, I'm not sure. But I certainly do like and endorse the idea, but certainly conscious of the cost and any obstacles that would be there. April, you shared perhaps that Fortis connectivity, I'm not sure infrastructure might be an issue. I'm not sure if there's an issue placing these lights on trees, that sort of thing, or if you just put them around existing lampposts. But I do think with a gradual approach, it's got some merit to introduce to the uptown community.
Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and I was going to say something similar with regards to that. I do believe it would be lovely to have the lights going up downtown. Perhaps, I don't know if you're looking at a cost share or whether Uptown Olds is going to pay for it. It's not quite clear in this letter. Certainly if Uptown Olds is paying for it, go for it, but I do think that it should be with the light standards, because I think that there was a comment made by Director Wagstaff at one point about putting the lights in the trees and how it can damage the trees. So I'm not sure about that, but perhaps CEO Williams could have a discussion with Uptown with regards to what the plan is and then bring something a little bit more concrete forward.
Very good. Councillor Daly?
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'd like to comment on this as well with, I concur with what Councillor Wilson and Ryan has said up to this point, and I think a plan needs to be put into place, not only as far as, the placement of the lights and where they're going to go and the style of lights and so forth, but also the cost, and see where the money's going to come from for this. But I think that this is something that's very important for our community to keep the downtown energized, as April said, and also alive, and attract people to it in not only the holiday season, but in off seasons as well. So I would agree with this study to take place.
Very good.
Could I add?
Certainly can.
Sorry. It's not that I want to get the last word.
No,
in everything,
you are
but-
getting the last word in.
I appreciate your comment, all of you, of price. We aren't looking for the town to shoulder all of this, that's for sure. We were looking for the town to give us an idea of what type of light they would want, and then we would put a motion in our own uptown meetings moving forward, how much we could afford per year. The other thing, I just want to note that we are becoming a society, and with that, we are able to access grants, that this is probably something, if we have matching funds, we would be able to, maybe in the next year, match some funds with. So that's sort of our thought process.
That's a very good thought process. Looking forward to that. Once again, thank you for your time, and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone.
You take care. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're good to go. Nobody needs a break. Okay, we'll move down to page 12, item 4A, please. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. So just, again, to confirm the step forward, would we make a motion here directing administration to collaborate with the Uptown Committee and look at, again, the feasibility of these lights, or that will just happen organically?
Councillor Wilson, Councillor CAO Williams, please.
Not yet. Obviously, council motions are at your prerogative. The only thing I would caution is that we have no information on this cost, integrity of the lights. Assuming they're not strung. If they are strung, of course, then clearance issues come in, et cetera, et cetera. If it's something council wishes to pursue in the short term, I would probably ask for direction to bring it to budget at least. Start with costing out the lights and talking to Fortis. It's just a matter of like how much, what's the priority here, because obviously we do have other priorities in the queue and limited amount of staff resources to put towards said priorities. So.
Thank you, absolutely, and Councillor Daly had his hand up.
Thank you, Your Worship, and to you, through you to CAO Williams. I understand the presentation as a communication piece right now, and I think that we need to wait for more information to come from the Uptown Olds Society, or what they call themselves now, right? And to come forward with a plan to us and then make a decision from there. I think right now it's just information. That's the way I understand what happened here today, so.
Very good, thank you. Councillor Daly. Councillor Blatz, did you have a comment?
My comment was very similar to Councillor Daly's, thank you. I think we should wait for them to bring us back a plan.
That's more or less what I heard her say as well. Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Although I did hear that she was looking for a little direction from the town as to what kind of lights. So it's hard for them to come up with a budget and a plan if they don't know whether or not a specific kind of light is warranted or not. So it might be something that Director Wagstaff might already have on his radar because this is not the first time with some kind of a discussion about lights in uptown or downtown in that area, Centennial Park anyway, has come up, and he might already have some of that information, some background. I'm not sure whether or not if we're looking at lights that would go on the light standard, perhaps Fortis could just say, these are the types of lights that we would, can connect up or whatever. So there might be a little bit of work that needs to be done by the administration, but I don't think a lot. And perhaps just to make a phone call to April and sort of straighten out what they're actually looking for the town for information. So
Yeah. I would leave it for our CEO to bring back to us for, I do recall that Fortis has already placed extra voltage on all the lamp posts for the new Christmas fixtures that we put in to light up, because those are much nicer than we had in the past as well, and they did have to do a repair there. Would everybody feel comfortable to let our CAO find out the proper information for us and then bring it back? Are you comfortable with that? Okay. I concur with Councillor Daly. It sounds like we do around the table, and we'll get the information brought back to us with the facts. Thank you. We'll move forward then. All right, page 14, please, of your agenda. Oh no, page 12, sorry. Just got pulled back there for a moment. Page 12, item 4A, Federal Electrical Boundaries Commission for Alberta. And our CAO has drafted a letter here. Would you like to speak further to this before we put a motion on the floor?
Yeah, it just was a request at last Monday's PMP to bring it back prior to sending it to the commission, so then no one has any issues with it. It's just for information, no resolution required.
Yes, I do know council did ask for this to come back, and if you are okay with the format and the information that we've gathered to send forward, or would you like to add any other comments? If not, I'd ask for a motion, please. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I would make the motion that the correspondence to the Federal Electoral Boundaries Commission for Alberta be approved as presented.
I'm seeing no further questions or comments to the letter, so I'll call the questions. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. I'm sorry, did you have a question?
No, if you could ask those that opposed, please.
Certainly. I will retract my comment, and I will start asking actually that at each, we haven't passed the new procedural bylaw, but you're correct, I should be asking. I would add the addition of those opposed to the letter. Okay, thank you. Would you like to tell us why? You certainly can.
The discussion that's been had about this letter is kind of all based on the hegemony or the connectivity of the communities. I would hazard to guess you can't get 100,000 people in rural Alberta together that are all the same, which is the way federal ridings are decided, by population, not by the commonality of the groups of people within it. We're very different from Bowden, as we're very different from Sundre, as we're very different from the people in Mountain View County. So nitpicking that this community or that community doesn't jive with us is kind of silly in my mind, and this is a waste of council's time.
Thank you for your comment, and I would just add personally that we have been requested by citizens of Olds to act upon at least a correspondence, and therefore, thank you. Is there any further change to the motion? Otherwise, it's carried. So we have, are you okay? We did. It is carried, sorry, and my apology for not calling for opposed. We'll move forward. Page 14, please, item 5A. We have both two bylaws here, and I'll just turn this over to CEO Williams.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. For the first bylaw at hand, the committee procedural bylaw is the first one, I believe?
That's correct.
Council procedural bylaw, okay. After Monday's PMP, a number of edits were made. That's about the extent of the changes that were made in red, as you can see. Outside of formatting and grammar, administration can make those corrections should we find further ones without council resolution. What's at hand today, if there's any more matters of substance to change based on our previous conversation last Monday.
Thank you very much. I certainly can open this to just check with council if there is a point of interest you would like to bring up prior to putting first reading on the floor. Seeing none, I would ask for first reading of bylaw 2022-19, please. Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the first reading be given to the Council and Committee Procedural Bylaw 2022-19 as presented.
Thank you very much. I will call for the question for those in favor. And seeing no opposed, that's carried. Now, I saw Councillor Ryan and Councillor Walsh put their hand up here, so we'll start with Councillor Walsh, and then we'll go to Councillor Ryan further from there.
Yeah, I'd like to move second reading be given to the Council and Committee Procedural Bylaw 2022-19 as presented.
Once again, I will call the question. Those in favor? Seeing no opposed, that's carried. We will need consent, unanimous consent for third and final reading. And Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that unanimous consent be given to the to present the Council and Committee Procedural Bylaw 2022-19 for third reading as presented.
I will then call the question. Those in favor? Once again, that is carried. Third and final reading, please. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that third reading be given to the Council and Committee Procedural Bylaw 2022-19 as presented.
And I will call the question. Those in favor? Once again, that is carried. Very good. We will move down to our bylaw 2022-20, and this, again, the process will be for the Council Policies and Priorities Committee. And we can certainly put the first reading on the floor, and then if anyone wants to have questions, we can go from there. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I would move that the first reading be given to the Council Policies and Priorities Committee Bylaw 2022-20 as presented.
Again, we've already reviewed all this, and I would ask if there's no questions. I will call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. No opposition on that. Second reading, please. Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that second reading be given to Council's Policies and Priorities Committee Bylaw presented 2022-20 as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. I'll call the question again. Those in favor? No opposition. That's carried. Unanimous consent, please. Who would like to make that? Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I move that unanimous consent be given to present the Council Policies and Priorities Committee Bylaw 2022-20 for third reading as presented.
Very good. I call the question. Those in favor? With no opposition, that is carried. Third and final reading, please. Councillor Walsh.
I'd like to move that third reading be given to the Council Policies and Priorities Committee Bylaw 2022-20 as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. I'll call the question. Those in favor? And that is carried. Would council like to take a 5-minute recess, or would you like to continue? Continue? Very good. New business, please. Page 30, just a minute, 14. Page 38. We are now on page 38 in new business, Proclamation Small Business Week. I would just get a motion on the floor, please. If we have discussion, we'll do that. Councillor Blatt.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that the week of October 16th to October 22nd, 2022 be proclaimed as Small Business Week in the town of Olds.
Does council have any questions to the motion? Councillor Cummins?
Not a question, Your Worship, specifically to this proclamation, but about proclamations in general. Would that be allowed?
Yes, it certainly does. I can see a question that I have too, so you move forward.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just a quick question here about proclamations in general, especially these ones that happen every year over and over again. Do we have a list of proclamations that we can expect to come forward each year on a calendar, something like that?
Through to our CEO Williams, I believe we do have that structure.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Dahl and Councillor Cummings. Very timely question. Myself and the legislative clerk have been discussing this. There is a policy in place regarding proclamations. We are going to bring that policy forward for amendment following the organizational meeting, which basically sets a list of standing proclamations. And if you noticed on the procedural bylaw, one of the amendments to the agenda structure was to add proclamations and announcements, whereas at the start of every meeting, instead of voting and having presentations, the mayor would just announce what proclamations were up for that particular meeting. That is going to be the intent of this draft policy that council will see in early November.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was in our procedure bylaw, new format for agendas. I really enjoyed that. We've added quite a bit, well, 3 or 4 items, but it's a good standing agenda. All right, no further questions then. Did I call for the vote? Okay, I will call for the vote then. Councillor Blatz put the vote on. Another question? Okay, the motion is on the floor from Councillor Blatz. Those in favor? That's carried. We'll move page 41, please, item 6B. Motion to get this on the floor, Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the month of November be proclaimed as Family Violence Prevention Month in the town of Olds.
Once again, if you have a question, seeing none, I will call the question for the vote. Those in favor? No one's opposed. That's carried. Thank you. Page 44, please. Item 6C, Council Policy 701C, Encroachment Agreements. I will just ask CAO Williams if he would like to say anything to this prior to asking for a motion.
No, I think what's presented here, they were minor amendments presented at a PMP meeting earlier this month, and unless there's any other questions, I'm comfortable proceeding as is.
Very good. May I call for resolution? Councillor Blatz?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that Council Policy 701C, encroachment agreements, be approved as presented.
I call for the question. Those in favor? No opposition. That is carried. Page 48, please. Item 6D. All right, gentlemen. Are we missing something?
Our planning officer came in for like literally a minute, turned around, and he didn't even have a chance to sit down.
What a gentleman he is. That's wonderful. Okay. Page 48 of your agenda, item 6D. I would like to get a motion on the floor for this, please. Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move the council call a special council meeting for Monday, October 31st, 2022 at 9 a.m. to consider the 2023 operating and capital budget, and I would assume it'd be in council chambers, the meeting place.
Yes, and you've added that to the motion. Very good.
I did, yeah.
All right, I will then ask council if you have anything that may be in your way of this. Otherwise, if not, I'll call the question. Those in favor? No opposition, that is carried. Page 49. Item 6E, Authorities, Boards, Committee, and Commissions of Council. Councillor Williams. Williams. Too much C's here.
I'm getting promoted every day. That's great. This also was brought up at PMP meeting earlier this month as a larger discussion item. What is presented for you today are two bylaw rescindments. As we discussed, FCSS was considered by council at the committee level and determined that it's most efficient and effective removing that committee from the town. The second Public Art Advisory Committee, same motion, same proposal, sorry, in place, that it be rescinded, the bylaw be rescinded, the committee dissolve, but that one would become an ad hoc administratively managed committee. So that's what is before you today, along with the thank you to the public at large for their time and dedication, volunteering for the community.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to be asking for 4 resolutions, and I would like to start with the first one for Family and Community Support Services. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I would motion and move that the Family and Community Support Services Advisory Board be dissolved and that bylaw 2019-25 be rescinded.
Any questions? Councillor Walsh?
Yeah, I support this, but I do have a question around it. Will there be policies coming forward now that there's no longer a committee that looks after this, but describe the function of staff to see that this gets done? Because I know there's certain things in there where representation can be made from individuals from the community, and if that's all lost, I'm worried that it may not be the greatest thing, but governing by policy is perfectly okay in my mind.
I noticed 2 people put their hands up. Who would you like to speak? Okay, Legislative Clerk?
Sorry, I was just going to say, thank you through the chair. There is the act, though, that we follow, that administration encourages and administrated the board to do, or the committee. So it's like a red tape reduction.
You and C.O. Williams.
Yeah, just to Councillor Walsh, it was for the FCSS committee in general. And yes, my understanding in discussion with the community services that pretty much all the prep work happens at the administrative level, and that framework exists. Now, to your question about formalizing a framework, we haven't considered that. I don't think it would be that difficult if council wanted to see one, or just if my word's good enough that we'll ensure something exists. So let's say there is community input in the grant process before it comes to council, or when grants come to council, that could be another avenue for public input if it's outside of the normal recipients or something to that effect. But right now, it was just going to be managed kind of as a status quo.
Very good. Councillor Blatz?
Being a former member of the FCSS board too, I think that it should be noted that all of the recipients of grants do come forward and make a presentation and a thank you to council, and usually about the time after we approve the funding that goes to each individual group. So that process will still remain in the same format, correct? Okay.
And certainly the staff, the administration does also bring that forward to us. So, yes, very good. Is that anything further? Councillor Walsh?
No, I understand that, having been on FCSS myself. It's just that those who are not successful will be talking to us. And we'd like, what is the process there if they're not being vetted by a board? So that would be my main concern.
Thank you very much. I believe our CEO has heard your comments, so. Certainly.
Thank you again, Mayor Dahl. And that's a good point Councillor Walsh made, because it's not the ones who are receiving the money who are generally going to come speak with council or councillors. Again, I haven't been through this part of the job yet, just by timelines, but the way I envision it, perhaps it happens already, but all applications would be under the purview of council to review, even the ones that were not successful. But at the end of the day, council does have the authority to grant those monies and disagree, so to speak, with administration. But I've been, I believe that it's generally a more structured process, at least in recent years, that structured, maybe perhaps consistent recurring process.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your question. We do have a motion on the floor right now from Councillor Wilson. Seeing no more questions, I'll call the question. I got to change that, switch that around. Those in favor? There's no opposition, that is carried. The second resolution, please, for Public Art Advisory. Councillor Cummings?
I move that the Public Art Advisory Committee be dissolved and the bylaw 2021-11 be rescinded.
Once again, do you have questions to this? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in favor? No opposition, that's carried. And the third one is to strike an ad hoc committee for public art to be managed by administration. Yes, Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I'll move that council strike an ad hoc committee for public art to be managed by administration.
Once again, I see no questions. Oh, I have a question. Councillor Ryan has a question.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Appreciate that. Through you to CEO Williams. Would the ad hoc committee then more than likely be made up of these Public Art Advisory Committee members then, I would imagine? Or are you looking to try to have it a smaller group?
Legislative Clerk Marcy.
Director Wagstaff has indicated that the existing committee will remain as the ad hoc committee, if they're able.
Thank you very much. Perfect.
Very good question. We have a motion on the floor from Councillor Blatz. I will now call the question. Those in favor? That's carried with no opposition. And lastly, that council thank the following members at large. I would certainly recommend that as presented, so you don't have to go through every name. Who would like that motion? Councillor Daly?
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that council thank the following public at-large volunteers for their time and dedication as listed below.
Very good. And they certainly have done some good work. Councillor Walsh?
Nan McKernan's name is spelt wrong there. Just should be N-A-N.
Thank you for the housekeeping. It is N-A-N McKernan. Any further comments? I will call for the question. Those in favor? That is carried, no opposition. Very good. All right, we are to page 60 of our agenda, item 7A at this time. Council, authorities, boards, committees, and reports. Just for your information, we have 3 submissions, the mayor, Councillor Ryan, and Wilson within the minutes or the agenda. We have 2 submissions, handouts from Councillor Blatz and Councillor Daly. Did you pass these out to everyone? Oh. Does everyone have a copy?
They were emailed.
Oh, I have a hand copy of Councillor Blatt's that I printed myself and Councillor Daly's. And I will start with then verbal reports from either Cummings or Walsh. Who would like to speak? We'll start with Councillor Walsh.
Yeah, I guess for the month of September, attended the community showcase on September 8th. Quite interesting, talked to a lot of people. September 14th, the OFL board meeting. September 16th, took in some of the Oktoberfest rodeo. Yeah, I guess the biggest thing is September 21st to 23rd at Alberta Communities. Two programs I was interested in, getting innovative waste structure, infrastructure, mainly because I'm the wastewater commission, and as we know, it's a $250 million asset that we maintain, and we only have 30,000 residents that cover that cost. Always looking for innovative ways to make it more feasible for the future, as prices were only going up. And the other one was solving municipal broadband, and I attended that with Councillor Cummings. I guess my observation there is most people there were from very small communities, less than 2,000, less than 1,000, who are really desperate for broadband. And I think the county here is probably doing it right by assisting small municipalities with broadband. And I think, I don't know if that would work for all, but something to look forward to. Those are my takeaways from the communities.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Councillor Cummings?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I just really wanted to talk about a couple of specific things rather than give an itinerary. So I attended the Red Deer Regional Municipal User Group, which, as many of you know, is our water supply system that follows the Red Deer River, obviously. Oddly enough, no matter how many times we hear that there's a drought going on in different parts of Alberta, the Red Deer River group is actually flush of water. Pardon the tongue flush, but most of the concerns that they have is how big can the communities in that basin grow over the next 20, 30, 40 years based on the volume of water that's expected to go there. So we had a presentation by a group called Water Smart talking about what we need in the future to develop that water supply for our growing communities, including the city of Red Deer, and that's a second dam reservoir and the funding need for that, right? So sometime in the near future, they're going to start talking about that and building up a cost on that. It may very well be handed down to communities like us who get our water from that river basin. That was the only really meaningful issue that came out from that meeting. The second meeting that I attended was with the Mountain View Regional Waste Commission. We had a presentation there from a company called Barm Energy. You may have read about them in the news recently. They're thinking of putting an energy from waste production facility in Innisfil. They gave a couple of presentations there. And they were talking mostly about how they can work with the Mountain View Regional Waste Commission to manage the waste supply going into the facility, which, of course, is, if you look at it from a waste management commission perspective, that facility would be a competitor to the waste management facility for supply of waste, which is how, of course, the commission pays for its processing. Of course, the big topic of recycling was mentioned quite a bit and has been a hot topic discussion matter at every one of our Mountain View Regional Waste Commission meetings. As more and more communities are thinking of stopping their recycling program, as we are fully aware that most of the recycling material simply ends at the dump. In fact, I have a picture on my camera of one of our local bins at the recycling center being dropped off at the dump while I was there myself for business purposes. So it's happening quite regularly, and we are not the only community looking in that direction. To speak of the event that we were at in Calgary, the solving the community broadband, of course, was a big topic for me because of the ONET issues that we're having, or ONET prospects that we have. We did hand out quite a number of business cards, and we did have quite a number of members of other communities approach us for some information. All of that information has been passed on to OLNet and Olds Fiber Limited, so they can continue with some communications that way. I also attended the educational session of weaponization of social media. It's kind of an interesting conversation because we had everybody from the people who simply avoid social media and intimately avoid social media like a plague, to people who engage it with everybody and every source. So there was no real solution other than have a plan. I found it kind of interesting that one mayor will answer every social media contact and another mayor will say, screw that, I'm not coming in a 10-foot pole of social media. So I don't think anybody has the right solution yet. The presenter's main solution was just have a plan. Whatever you do, have a plan. But other than that, just all the other regular stuff.
Thank you, Councillor Cummings. Within my report, there's only one thing that I really want to highlight. And one of the Olds High School awards for this year, they gave out $48,000 in scholarships that were awarded. And it was important to note that the awards sponsored, ONET had 6 awards that they had sponsored, and the town of Olds had 4 that were sponsored. And the students were absolutely amazing in receiving these presentations. The DOTS Day Dual Credit Award has grown up to 40 students for 2022, and that's remarkable. Tom Christensen, the past principal, was emceeing for the last time and did an excellent job of being able to speak to the students as they came once again for the last time. And it was truly an eye-opening event, and I'm happy to see that ONET and the town of Olds are sponsoring awards for these students at the high school. That was really good. And one word I learned that I really liked at the convention that was mentioned at the panel discussion of diversity and inclusion was that all elected officials are inclusion ambassadors. I thought that was pretty funny. Yeah, and my report's in here. I won't go through it all, but there was a lot of exciting work that we have done through August to October 10th here. So thank you very much for your reports, everyone. And I don't believe we have a motion on the floor do we have a motion on the floor? No. I would ask for a motion. I see right now we don't have one. Councillor Walsh.
Yeah, I move that the reports from council, authorities, boards, committees, and commissions ending October 11th, 2020 be received for information.
Thank you very much. It's always good to read or hear what all council is doing that in their portfolios. So we'll call. Somebody has a question? No? I will ask. Okay, thank you. I'll call for the question. Those in favor? Okay, no opposition. That is carried. We'll move down to page 72 now of your agenda, please. And this is the 2022 Citizen Budget Survey. And I would ask how you'd like to present this, CEO Williams?
W's and C's.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Director Lindeman is here with us, and she's going to give us a high-level summary of the information, and if any more specific questions are needed, you can ask her.
Thank you. So this year, the 2022 Budget Engagement Survey ran from August 2nd to September 16th. We had 295 responses, which was up from 155 in 2021. Just a quick note before I get into things is every comment received was included in the document in your agenda package in its original form, with the exception of 8 comments that were deemed to be inappropriate and removed from the comments. So while the entire document was provided today in your agenda as information for budget moving forward, I'm only going to go over a few of the main highlights today. Starting with each specific department area, we saw the same results as we did in 2021, where respondents would like to see services remain the same or increase. However, they would not support a tax rate increase to do so. Moving along to page 99 in the agenda, there were 6 questions that were specific to solid waste. The first question asked residents if they would support continuing with the current 3-week residential waste pickup rotation, regardless of any potential cost increases. 67% said that they would not support this. The next question was specific to the blue bin recycling. Respondents were asked if they would support removing the blue bin in favor of increasing black bin collection. Responses to this one were split almost exactly 50-50. Next, we asked if residents would be in favor of suspending the green compost bin over the winter months. 77% of respondents were in favor of this. The next 2 questions focused on the 3-yard community compost bins. Respondents were in favor of both reducing the number of bins and having the bins located in more centralized locations throughout town. If we move to page 124, the residents were asked if they supported the Town of Olds continuing to fund the Mountain View Museum, and 66% responded yes to this. The last area I will highlight today is the value for the programs and services received. 70% of respondents feel they receive fairly good or very good value for their tax dollar, which is up 1% from 2021. And now I would just open it up if you had any specific questions.
I would open the floor to council if you so choose to ask a question. Thank you for reviewing that for us. There certainly was a lot of responses to that were similar. Very well explained. Then I would ask for a motion on the floor, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that the 2022 Citizen Budget Survey be received for information.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor from Councillor Blatz. I'll call for the question. Those in favor? That is carried. That was a very interesting report. Thank you for taking the time to be able to give those results. Now we will go down to page 143, please. Item 9A, correspondence and information. Councillor Wilson, you had your hand up also for the last motion. Would you like to put the motion on the floor for us to go further?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I would move that the correspondence and information report ending October 11, 2022 be received for information.
I would open the floor at this time if there's any councillors that would like to speak to any of these correspondence. Very good. Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And now, page 163, which is going to be verbal anyways, I would ask our CAO for his report.
Actually, as a nice surprise, I do not have anything to add today, so I exhausted my resources at PMP. So,
Wonderful to hear. If there's no report, we don't need a resolution for it, do we? We don't need to take it off the agenda. There's no report to further from there. All right, very good. At this point, if there's nothing further, are we okay over there? Good. Councillor Daly?
Could I just ask a question for clarification on one of the correspondence that came out from Bridgeport Manor?
Okay.
Bridgestone Manor?
Just one moment. So you're asking permission to go back on the agenda?
No, I just want
Okay.
for clarification of the letter, CAO Williams. In the letter, it says that they pay for their own maintenance and snow removal of their portion of the drive there. And I just want clarification that they're saying that the town employees are using that drive as well. Is this something that we should be concerned about, that it's their private road and yet the town of Olds is using it for transportation?
Ed C.O. Williams.
I have to find it here.
What they pay for, so from Highway 27 at the lights at Cornerstone by the new McDonald's heading north to Rotary Athletic Park, the first, I would say, almost 50% of that road is privately owned by Cornerstone. And I believe, according to this letter, which is the only verification I have, so please don't take my word for it, that Cornerstone property owners and Bridgestone Manor share a somewhat split cost on that maintenance. What this letter refers to is that the town employees, I'm assuming using marked vehicles, that's how they know, use this road.
Right.
Probably true. That's all I have to add.
Is,
Go ahead, Councillor Daly.
thank you, Your Worship. Is this something that we need to send a note to operations and direct them down south of the operations rather than cutting through the Cornerstone to alleviate this concern?
I would say no. It is a public roadway. It's not. Even though it's owned privately, it's public accessible. And in Bridgestone Manor's in a particular instance, probably not that common because they abut a shopping center. But shopping center roads, the common place is that they don't want the municipality to own the road because all the developments are then subject to municipal road standards, setbacks, turning lanes, speed, etc. So that's why McDonald's got built. If that was a municipal road heading north-south, that would never have been approved, for instance, because we have much stricter planning regimes than a parking lot essentially does. So even though it's a privately owned road by Cornerstone and because Bridgestone requires access to it, I'm not sure of the ownership structure they might have. According to this letter, they do cost share for that. But telling town vehicles to stay off it, I mean, I don't think there's much rationale there. I mean, I don't think it makes sense for us, unless we're going to Rotary Athletic Park. I can't see it being much of a shortcut to go through a speed bumped parking lot to make it there. So I'm assuming it's people going from 27 to Rotary Park when they have to stop there or for whatever reason, or vice versa, going from Rotary to 27. But to me, it's not a significant issue.
Thank you for your clarification, and thank you for Mayor and Council for the time. Thank you.
We'll add that they don't have a problem with people going on the property. There's quite a few garage sales over there as well. How does our town vehicle turn their water on when their new residents are there? How do they work there? And they also do pay for their own grass cutting and snow removal, so I can understand that part of it. But thank you for bringing that up. That was good information. But I don't know any other way the town trucks could turn their water on and help out in that area if we couldn't bring our trucks on there. So thank you for sharing that. Motion to adjourn, please. Councillor Blatz?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that we adjourn the meeting today at 2:42 p.m.
Very good. Those in favor? That is carried.